Okay, I thought these were some interesting comments from Alen Babic, who's been sparring Tyson Fury in recent months. He's also sparred the likes of Joe Joyce in the past, and he actually sparred Lawrence Okolie recently as well. So this is what Babic had to say in a recent interview regarding Tyson Fury. He said, quote, "He's one of my favorite personas. I was in his camp for 1 month, and he was so good to me and gave me everything. He's a true persona. I think Joe Joyce doesn't have that persona, not even close like Tyson Fury. But Joe Joyce is, in my opinion, a more dangerous guy right now. I think Tyson Fury is more spent, you know? He also said his arms hurt, his elbows, everything. He's bleep, right? In his own words. I think Joe Joyce is that kind of juggernaut. He just doesn't feel pain. Something like myself. He just doesn't feel pain. He just goes on. I don't know if it's smart for Tyson Fury to take that fight. I think that's the toughest fight, but I will never count Tyson Fury out. He's the champion, and that's not for nothing." And yeah, the article later goes on to talk about Tyson Fury saying similar things. So in a interview with BT Sport, Tyson Fury said, "I'm like an old banger, a Ford Escort with 250,000 miles on the clock, and every part of me is absolutely battered to pieces, joints, elbows, knees, back. I've got some severe mileage on the clock. Imagine being a heavyweight, being punched to pieces for years and years, and keep going, day in, day out, and just keep taking the pain. It's like Rocky said, it's not how much pain you can give out, but it's about how much you can take and keep moving forward." All right, those are the words of the Gypsy King. Now, you think about Tyson Fury's career, he has had some tough fights. The first and the third fights with Deontay Wilder were tough. He shipped a lot of damage in both those fights. He, in his early career, had tough fights with John McDermott. Both the first and second fights were tough. He was on the floor against Nevin Pikage, but that otherwise wasn't a particularly punishing fight for Tyson Fury. He did get hit with that big right hand and dropped. The Steve Cunningham fight was a tough fight. So yeah, he's had tough fights, but it's not like he's a Holyfield. You know, when you look to Evander Holyfield at the same age as Tyson Fury, Holyfield had been in just the most hellacious battles. At cruiserweight with Dwight Muhammad Qawi. At heavyweight, of course, the fights with Bo. The absolute mayhem in the ring against Burt Cooper. The fight with George Foreman. He'd been outboxed and busted up by Michael Moorer. Stopped by Riddick Bowe in the third fight, which was the most brutal of all. I mean, the first fight with Riddick Bowe was brutal for Holyfield because he got badly hurt. He got dropped for the second time in his career, really, but he hit the canvas, whereas against Burt Cooper, it was a standing count because the ropes held him up. But yeah, he took terrible punishment in the first Bowe fight. I mean, far worse punishment than Tyson Fury's ever taken in any fight in terms of the volume of clean blows he had to absorb. So he got really beaten up in the first Bowe fight. Second Bowe fight was very tough as well, but he managed to win. Third Bowe fight was the most brutal for Holyfield because he got knocked out badly and he was nearly out cold in that fight. Brutal fight. The most brutal, if you haven't seen the Bowe Holyfield trilogy, the third fight is the most brutal of the three, right? And Holyfield had all kind of miles on the clock. So by the time he was 34, I think he was 34 when he fought Tyson in 96, November 9th, 96. I think he was about 34 then. He had way more miles on the clock than Tyson Fury in terms of punishment. But the thing about Fury, the difference with Fury and Holyfield is that Holyfield was a consummate athlete, whereas Tyson Fury doesn't take care of his body like that. Of course, he had his time out the ring where he ballooned up to whatever it was, 400 pounds or more. And just getting that weight off is going to put a terrible amount of miles on your joints. I mean, Tyson Fury said he ran up some mountain, I guess it was in Spain or whatever, when he was weighing 400 pounds plus. What do you think that's going to do to your knees, right? To your ankles and your feet? It's going to mash you up. And this was a process that took, half a year, a year? And he's already a very big man anyway, even when he's at fighting weight. That's going to take toll on his knees and his joints and stuff like that. So, yeah, Tyson Fury not staying in shape puts miles on the clock. Also, the fact that Fury has chosen to go down the route, and not all fighters do this, by the way. Not all top-level fighters choose to pick the toughest sparring in the world. With Mike Tyson, for example, he never really sparred people that were that great most of the time. Now, he wasn't trying to get Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe. He certainly didn't have those guys in his training camps for, his championship bouts. No. And obviously Mike Tyson lost his world title first time around in 1990. Lewis and Bowe maybe turned pro about a year before that because they were both at the 88 Olympics, right? So, yeah, Mike Tyson was never known for bringing in the greatest sparring partners. He had like solid fringe contenders and journeymen. He did have Greg Page in his camp a couple times, who was a former world heavyweight champion, but he was well past it by the time he was sparring Tyson. So that was Mike Tyson. He didn't bring in the greatest guys for sparring. But then you had other people like Muhammad Ali, who did bring in the very best of the next generation to spar with. He had Larry Holmes. That was his chief sparring partner for many years, and Holmes went on to be the next dominant heavyweight after Ali. The same goes for the Klitschko's. They would always try and bring in the best of the best in the world from the amateur game, or the best young prospects and contenders, and spar them. Tyson Fury has gone down that road as well. So he's been in there from way back in the days with up-and-coming contender. Dylan White was a sparring partner for Tyson Fury back then. Steve Cunningham, he recruited him as a sparring partner after they had their fight. Steve Cunningham, of course, he did go out to the Klitschko camp, but he never sparred him. And since Tyson Fury's comeback, when he signed with Frank Warren, and well, he was with Frank Warren prior to the hiatus, but when he signed with Bob Arum for his comeback, he's been sparring the likes of Jared Anderson. Anderson in his early 20s. He is going to be giving Tyson Fury all kinds of work, right? When you're in there with a guy who's that athletic and young, and you're a fighter with lots of miles on the clock, it's going to be tough in there. So Tyson Fury's been sparring him. Of course, he sparred Joe Joyce. He sparred Daniel Dubois, David Adelaide, all the young generation of dangerous. He sparred Michael Hunter as well. All the young generation of these, up-and-coming fighters. Fury's sparred most of them. So that also puts miles on the clock. You got these young guys in the gym trying to take your head off every day, year in, year out, hitting you in the body, hitting you in the shoulders and the arms and all that kind of thing. He is going to feel like a clapped out car when these young guys are putting those kind of hands on him. Not that they're dominating him or anything like that necessarily in sparring, but they're definitely, over rounds and rounds of sparring, hundreds of rounds, they're definitely going to do damage to him, particularly to his body. Yeah, because Tyson Fury moves this way and that, and he catches a lot of shots on his arms and his shoulders and whatever. And that does take its toll on you. So I take what Alen Babic says on board with Tyson Fury having a lot of miles on the clock, but he's still, to this point, been able to hold it together in pro fights and get the win. Now, some people would say, well, you look at the guys that Tyson Fury has been beating of late, and they've got a lot of miles on the clock as well. Case in point, Derek Chisora for his last fight, who's really up past it. And even before that, Dylan White. Now, I'll reiterate what I said in the post-fight review that I did following the Dylan White fight. Yes, Dylan White has got a lot of miles on the clock, but for my money, that was the best version of Dylan White that has ever existed, aside from punch resistance. I think Dylan White was better in every other way when he fought Tyson Fury than he was when he fought Anthony Joshua, for example. Again, except for the fact that when he fought AJ, he could take a much better punch. That's what I will say. But everything else, I think Dylan White was better. And at heavyweight, of course, punch resistance is a big deal, especially if you're a relatively short heavyweight. Dillian Whyte's about 6'3", which in the modern age is, I don't know, medium size or maybe on the borderline of short for a modern heavyweight. So when you're a shorter heavyweight and you don't have quick feet and you don't have an amazing defense, I'm talking about Dillian Whyte here, then being vulnerable in terms of punch resistance is a serious problem. Right? If you're going to be a slow-footed heavyweight who's short or shorter than the top guys, you're going to need to have a great chin. Either a great defense or a great chin, or preferably both. If you don't, yeah, problems. Problems for you. And of course, we saw that with Dillian Whyte when he fought Tyson Fury. When's the last time Tyson Fury fought somebody who was completely fresh? That's the question. Maybe Wilder in the first fight was the the second fight. Wilder was pretty fresh at that stage. Not like he was crazy young, but he was relatively fresh. He hadn't really taken that much punishment in his career. So some people are going to make that argument. But at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. Tyson Fury is undefeated. Hopefully, we get to see this undisputed fight against Usyk next. Fury has spoken about how he thinks Usyk has got loads of miles on the clock. And I agree. Usyk must have loads of miles on the clock. Again, mainly from the training rather than the fighting, because Usyk really hasn't taken much punishment in his fights. He's taken far less punishment in his pro fights than Tyson Fury has taken. You can't question that. Far less punishment than Fury in his pro fights. But in the gym, the miles and miles on the road, his knees. I remember a few years back, Usyk was having some serious issue, I think, with his elbow. And if you've thrown the millions and millions of punches that Usyk has thrown over the years in his career, in training camps and in fights, yeah, you're going to pick up wear and tear. Is Usyk more worn than Tyson Fury? I suspect not. I think Fury is more worn than Usyk because of the fact Usyk keeps himself in shape and he doesn't get hit as much as Fury does, including with body shots. Fury gets hit more on the body, on the arms than Usyk. So, yeah, both guys have got miles on the clock. I'm going to say Fury's got more miles on the clock. But he does have the size. And if he can use the size effectively, as he did against Steve Cunningham, he might be able to negate Alexander Usyk's extra speed, his better balance, his better coordination, and his freshness. If Fury can just maul him like a bear, you know, like, what's that film called? The Revenant, with Leo DiCaprio, where the bear just mauls him. I guess that's based on a true story, that film. Yeah, that's how Tyson Fury needs to be against Alexander Usyk. Is to maul him like that bear. But of course, that bear came off second best. So he needs to be careful. You know, Usyk doesn't have any surprises for him. But that's the game plan, I think. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And of course, I forgot to address one of the main points that Alen Babic made. He thinks, and I know many of you agree with this, by the way, there's lots of people who don't think Usyk is the toughest fight for Tyson Fury out there. Many of you think it's Joe Joyce. And Alen Babic, having sparred both of them, he's sparred Fury and he's sparred Joyce, he thinks that Joyce is the toughest fight for Fury out there. And, well, as you heard in the quote, he's advising Fury to not take that fight. He thinks that will be too much for him at this stage. You know, personally, I tend to think Usyk has a better chance against Fury than Joyce. Not that Joyce has no chance, but he is unbelievably slow. Surely Tyson Fury is going to see Joyce's punches coming a mile off. I think the two attributes that Joyce has that might cause Tyson Fury some issues are his footwork and his jab. But if Joe Joyce is just coming forward juggernaut style from early against Fury, he's going to be getting picked off. And Fury, even though he's not a one-punch knockout specialist, yeah, he knocked out Dillian Whyte with one punch, but Whyte gets hurt all the time and dropped a lot, and his punch resistance is not great. Even though Fury's not a one-punch specialist, he hits hard enough to hurt people, get people out of there. So with Joe Joyce, if he's getting hit enough consistently, with those clean shots from Tyson Fury. I wouldn't be surprised if Fury could hurt Joyce if he catches him enough times. So I think Joyce's jab would be the key in the fight. He's tall enough and he's got quick enough feet and his jab has good enough technique that he would be able to give Fury problems with that punch, I think. Jabbing upstairs and downstairs, body, chest, head, that kind of thing. When you are a much slower fighter than your opponent, the jab is absolutely crucial. Crucial. And it can make the difference between getting bamboozled and actually winning the fight. And to give you an example, Vernon Forrest, when he fought Shane Mosley. Mosley at the time was seen by many as the pound-for-pound number one. He was really lighting up the lower divisions, lightweight, 147, 140, 147. But when he fought Vernon Forrest, Forrest just stuck him on the end of a jab. Forrest was nowhere near as fast as Shane Mosley. Not that he was crazy slow, but he wasn't anywhere near the athlete Mosley was. Stuck him on the end of a jab and said, okay, get past that. And Mosley couldn't do it, you know, for all his speed and his explosiveness and the crazy combinations Mosley had back in his prime. He could not get past this well-thrown, well-timed Vernon Forrest jab. Just wasn't happening. Another example, although this guy didn't win, was Frank Bruno against Lennox Lewis. I mean, Lennox Lewis, at the time, he was like 28 years of age. He was in his prime. He was athletic. He was fast, so much faster than Frank Bruno, so much more fluid. But Bruno stuck this telephone pole of a jab on Lennox Lewis, very well-timed ramrod jab. And Lewis was having all kind of problems with it. All kind of problems. Bruno wasn't really landing that many significant power shots. Yeah, he did land a few here and there, but it was the jab for the most part that was giving Lennox Lewis so many problems. And Lewis, of course, was known for having a great jab himself. But Bruno's jab was tremendous, particularly that night against Lennox Lewis. Wasn't even a fast jab, but it was well-timed. And this is where the adage in boxing, timing beats speed, comes from. If you time the jab right, you don't have to be the fastest guy in the world. You can have success against a much quicker opponent. And so Joyce against Fury, the jab would be absolutely key, I think, for Joe Joyce. That would be his key to winning the fight. I don't think he would win, but if he were to win, the jab would play a massive part in him winning, I think. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Tyson Fury, or in the view of Alen Babic, Fury is at risk against Joe Joyce, and Joyce has, according to Babic, the best chance of beating him. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.